Okay, here we go. Good evening. Hi. I'd like to call this evening's regular meeting of the Westerville Board of Education to order and ask the treasurer to please call the roll.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Here.
Dr. French?
Here.
Mr. Velardo?
Here.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Here. Thank you. Would you all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to item 3 in the agenda this evening. Item 3, board meeting minutes. This is discussion and approval of the minutes of the Board of Education meeting on October the 27th. We do not do a motion and a second and a vote on our minutes. These are approval by consensus. Anyone have any comments, questions, corrections? I hear none. So we will move on to what I imagine most of you are here for. Which actually I hope most of you are here for. Item 4 on the agenda, district highlights and recognitions this evening. And tonight is a very special night. Tonight we will be recognizing the A+ award recipients. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Kellogg.
Thank you, President Nestor Baker. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity this evening. You know, I've been on board now, I don't know, some odd 16 months. And one of the great opportunities, and people may not realize this happens, is that oftentimes in talking to community members, parents, students, other staff members, you hear stories of our staff who do things that are extraordinary, well beyond the job call, the pay scale, and the time frame for kids and for our district. And so I thought I was a genius and came up with the idea, you know, we should do something to recognize that work. And then I was quickly reminded that in the past, Westerville had done that. And so it's just a matter of reviving a past tradition, so I'm not as original as I thought I was. But that being the case, we have resurrected the A+ awards, and so tonight we're going to honor 7 individuals who are here with friends and family tonight, who will be the recipients of our Westerville City School District A+ Employee Awards. These awards are presented to teachers and support staff who distinguish themselves through a single or ongoing demonstration of exemplary performance. The winners were selected by a committee that included myself, the treasurer, 2 Board of Education members, community members, a parent representative, and a community engagement coordinator. And those folks who are here this evening, I'll ask them to come forward when we do the presentations. From the community, we had Mayor Diane Falsman, who will be with us this evening. Another community member we had was our PTO president, Lisa Coyne, who's here with us this evening. We'll have her come forward. Lynn Maslowski, who helped us put this together, who was also on the selection committee from our communications department, did great work. I want to thank Jill Beck as well for her work in putting this together, and then of course our board members and Bart and myself. So this evening we get the opportunity to recognize those individuals. So tonight's recipients display exceptional performance in support of the district's mission, which is to prepare students to contribute to the competitive and changing world in which we live, and our values, which include respect, inclusiveness, community, communication, collaboration, innovation, nurturing, trust, and accountability. And at this time, I'd like to turn the award presentation over to our board liaison, Tracy Davidson, for community engagement and communication. So, Ms. Davidson, it's all yours.
Thank you. First, I'd like to ask Andrew Heck to come up to the podium so he can introduce his the person he nominated. In addition to that, could the board please join me up front with Lisa O'Coyne and Mayor Fosselman so we can congratulate the winners.
As the principal at Cherrington Elementary, I have the honor to share a little bit about Amy Hines. Amy is a second grade teacher at Cherrington Elementary and is one of the most dedicated teachers. She spends countless hours planning and figuring out how to meet the needs of all of her students. She is in constant contact with the families of her students and other staff members in order to create a bond to help every child meet their full potential. Amy is consistently saying how she will not let students fall between the cracks, making sure every need is met. While students are in her second grade classroom, she is constantly surrounding them with praise and her muchikis. Muchikis are one of the positive things that she's always handing out. Outside the classroom, you'll see Amy at sporting events and community activities of her students, both present and past. Amy has been a leader at Cherrington Elementary and within the Westerville District, piloting new software and implementing new teaching strategies, and then sharing her experiences with her peers have helped create an excellent district. From iPods and Chromebooks to the use of Smartboard, Amy sees the excitement in the eyes of her students and how technology and the software that goes with it can help motivate and provide important avenues for learning for a diverse group of students. Amy continues to mentor teachers at every point in their career. It is not uncommon to find a group of teachers in her room brainstorming strategies of how to work with students. Amy is a data-driven teacher who focuses on formal and informal assessments to drive the instruction in her classroom. Her knowledge of her students, both academically and socially, allows her to individualize her instruction. Amy is an excellent teacher and goes beyond the expectations every day. That is why Amy deserves an A+ award. Amy Hines.
Next, I'd like to welcome Victoria Haslett to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Victoria Hazlett, principal at Wilder Elementary School, and I am delighted this evening to introduce to you Mrs. Shelley Speakman. Mrs. Speakman is in the unique position of preparing children with multiple disabilities to contribute to a competitive and changing world. She accomplishes this charge through creatively teaching children functional life skills in the real-world setting. She plans community field trips to the grocery store, yard sales, restaurants, and even raises money for a day of camping. She creates authentic job-like tasks in the school setting, teaching students skills that will help them secure work in the community in their future. She consistently seeks paths to provide inclusionary opportunities for her students to access typical school life as well as preparing them to live in society. Mrs. Speakman goes above and beyond the scope of her role in many other ways. She serves as our safety patrol advisor, she serves as a mentor to new teachers, and she works with many outside agencies to support individuals with disabilities in the community at large. She participates in various walkathons sponsoring her students with disabilities. She attends doctor appointments with her students and their families. She visits her students when they are at home or in the hospital, and she remains in contact with her students after they have moved on to the secondary level and into adulthood. In her local community, she instructs a dance class for children with disabilities one evening a week. Mrs. Speakman's respect and love for her students and all individuals with disabilities is apparent to all who know her. Not only is she an amazing teacher for her students, but she serves as an example of compassionate service to others and a strong commitment to her profession and her community. I would like to introduce Mrs. Shelley Speakman.
Thank you. We're here tonight to talk about Mr. Mack, Jeffrey McMillan at Blendon Middle School. Thank you for allowing us to join you in the ceremony. Knowing that every person in this room is busy, we appreciate that the district takes the time to have parents and students recognize exceptional people.
I think it's important to know that students and parents both made nominations on behalf of Coach Mack. My last child has just finished his final year in cross country with Coach Mack, and I must say that his dedication and enthusiasm have not flagged in the over 11 years that I have seen him teach and coach. The middle school years are not the easiest years. Kids get muddled, but Coach Mack keeps them on track through teaching, encouraging, questioning, praising, modeling, and mentoring. Both in the classroom and on the course, Mr. Mack consistently shows kids that what they're doing right here, right now, has a direct impact on their future. He gives them a sense of continuity and community, showing them a path to being a stronger person and team player. By connecting their experience as middle schoolers to realizing their potential as adults, he shows them they have a place waiting for them in the world as responsible global citizens.
We invite every board member to read the comments submitted by our families. Every young adult deserves to have the presence of an adult such as Mr. Mack. We think that if one were able to talk with all of Mr. Mack's former students and parents, they would be able to tell you that his behavior is consistent with not one or two of the district values, but all of the stated values of the Westerville City School District. We introduce Mr. Mack, Jeffrey McMillan.
I'd like to invite Erica Hinkle to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. As we all know, every staff member within our district has the capacity to impact the lives of others around them. Students, teachers, secretaries, study hall monitors, cafeteria personnel, and custodians. Sometimes these staff members make a huge difference in the overall feel of a building. Sean Gorsuch is a fine example of one such staff member. Sean has been a custodian in the Westerville District for 7 years. Recently, his hard work and responsibility have been rewarded as he was chosen to be the head custodian at Genoa Middle School. This is no small task given the myriad of duties he must perform and the countless teachers and others whose needs he must try to satisfy. This head custodian position is not one that Sean takes lightly or for granted. He arrives to work each day with a smile on his face and the will to work hard. Sean often does the wave. When you talk to him, I can't do it as good as Sean. When you talk to him, and you can't help but smile to yourself when conversing with him. As a father himself, Sean is always eager to ask about the welfare of others, their children, and their families. He never complains of his duties. In fact, he carries out these duties in the finest manner possible, always timely and efficient. Despite Sean's job of dealing with random issues and problems around the building, he always treats people with kindness and respect. When a student needs help with a locker or there is a mess to clean up, Sean responds in a quick and helpful manner, always. Should someone need whiteboard spray, a rug shaken out, or just an empty box, Sean will diligently search for the needed supply to help to remedy the situation as soon as possible. I simply can't say enough about how hardworking and pleasant Sean is. His polite and positive demeanor make each day enjoyable at Genoa. Sean is very deserving of this award, and I am proud that he has earned it. On behalf of the students and staff at Genoa, we want to congratulate you for receiving this award. Keep living the dream, Sean.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Schaefer, and I'm a speech and language pathologist at Walnut Springs Middle School. And I have the privilege of working with Patrick Quinn, who is an outstanding teacher at Walnut Springs. He's deserving of this A+ award tonight because of his hard work, his positive attitude, and his relentless support for the students he teaches. Last year, Patrick made a choice to leave the familiarity of his high school classroom and come to Walnut Springs Middle School this year, where he serves as an intervention specialist in a multiple disabilities unit. When he heard of the need to staff a new unit serving students with multiple disabilities at Walnut Springs, Patrick volunteered to change positions. Not only does his job require hands-on attention from the time his students arrive until the end of the school day, Patrick spends much of his free time constructing communication boards, planning multisensory lessons, communicating with parents, and ensuring that his students' dietary needs are met. I don't feel like this is enough, really, to just explain all that Patrick does in a day. I wanted to keep it brief, but this man just gives his life on a day-to-day basis to these students. I know it goes beyond the scope of the school day because he doesn't have time during the school day to do anything but serve the students. So Patrick Quinn is definitely an A+ educator.
Good evening, everybody. Whoa, I'll leave it. We've already seen, and everybody in this room knows that teaching is a tough job. According to a 2007 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, It is number 8 on a list of occupations that have high associations with depression and other mental health problems. So thanks, teachers. 2 other professions rank a bit higher on the list: caregiver and social worker. As teacher at the Westerville South Academic Enrichment Lab, Candy Hall does these jobs, teacher, caregiver, and social worker, simultaneously all day, every day. It's a small classroom for many of the district's toughest kids, really. And if you think about what all those jobs have in common, they put really great, optimistic people in front of a lot of humanity's problems and have them solve it all day long. And it's not always going to work. Yet Candy shows up every single day and works just as if it's going to, and quite often it does. We're really thankful to have Candy Hall at Westerville South. Every time I see her, I walk by the hallway, sometimes I'll stop in, she's either counseling a student through a tough issue, helping somebody prepare for an upcoming life event, providing one-on-one instruction on all of the school subjects because the students in there are studying all kinds of different things. Candy's a caregiver, social worker, and teacher of the highest order. She goes to students' house after school during the summer to help them keep on track and stay involved in school. She texts, calls, visits students and their parents frequently, and does really whatever it takes to keep students on track towards graduation. Most importantly, she earns the trust of students very, very quickly and does it with honesty. And we're proud to have her at Westerville South and consider her an A+ teacher. Congratulations, Candy Hall.
That wasn't in alphabetical order, I don't think. I was told, I thought I was going to go second to the last. Well, I'm honored to have the opportunity to introduce Leslie Bauman, who I'm proud to call my colleague and my friend. As teachers, we're often confronted with grade inflation, but I can confidently say that this A+ is well earned. A Westerville teacher, coach, mentor, advisor, and parent, Leslie is the embodiment of the district's mission. In the classroom and in the community, she is the consummate professional. During her 20 years as a language arts teacher at Westerville North, she's earned the respect and admiration of parents, teachers, administrators, and perhaps most importantly, students. Each year, each class, each day, each period finds Leslie changing and adapting to the needs of her students. As a teacher, she offers depth, initiative, creativity, while encouraging students to look beyond the narrow world of high school to embrace the wider perspective, and in that process, generating a curiosity that produces lifelong learners. As North's Academic Enrichment Coordinator, Leslie not only identifies gifted students, she develops programming to ensure students' needs are met on all levels. For example, she initiated our annual Advanced Placement Night, which attracts 200 students and parents. Additionally, she created and implemented an AP Scholars Award, which honors students who excel in North's rigorous AP curriculum. Last year, more than 60+ students were recognized with this distinction at graduation. Responding to students' interests, she also organized a Westerville North Book Club. This monthly gathering of students from all grade levels sees high schoolers staying after school to read and discuss books with teachers for fun and a little food. Not surprisingly, Leslie's influence extends beyond the classroom. A nationally board-certified teacher, she's recognized as a teacher leader both in our building and in our district. Working with her peers on curriculum development, testing concerns, Common Core implementation, and more, Leslie's impact reaches far more students than those who are fortunate enough to be in her classroom. With 2 sons, Alex and Evan, at Westerville South, Leslie is also a tireless parent volunteer. Her work as the coach coordinator of Westerville's Wild Warbot robotics team is but one example of her determination and drive. When robotics was abandoned 4 years ago, she single-handedly resurrected this unique district-wide program that draws students from all 3 high schools. She coordinates all aspects of the team, from overseeing parent volunteers to recruiting area professionals to assist students with engineering, computing, and production of a 100-pound functional robot. To finance the students' efforts, Leslie has written and received grants from NASA, JCPenney, American Electric Power Company, and more. Last year, the Westerville Wild Warbots heralded unprecedented success by advancing to the Queen City First semifinals and the Buckeye Regional Final, all under her dedicated care. A love of literature, a love of language, a love of learning, a love of people. These are the gifts that Leslie Bauman gives to us. These are the gifts that she gives to Westerville. And these are some of the reasons why she is an A++ teacher. Thank you very much.
Okay, where is it? There it is. We'll wait just a minute for the room to clear slightly. For everybody to leave. All right, we'll move on in our agenda now to item 5, which is the report section of the agenda. And this evening, we have a report on the Learning and Teaching Roadmap. Dr. Kellogg?
Thank you, Madam President and board members. I guess it was about a year ago, and you'll get a recount of the history. We put together the Learning and Teaching Roadmap that staff is going to present to you this evening. Before they do, I want to thank a couple of people for their work as they've taken on leadership and responsibility for guiding us through this, and that would be Jen Knapp, Greg Lewis, and Stephanie Donafee, who have really provided great leadership in making sure that we're rolling through this. Probably with a lot of pressure for me, but they do a great job of leading us through this. And they have a number of people who work with them to make this happen. And it's kind of exciting to see where we're at, because really tonight, you're going to get the first taste of the very start of things. And you'll see where we're supposed to end up in 3 years of this and just how fast the pace goes. But we were intentional about the pace and the magnitude early on because, frankly, as I've shared, the educational roadway is strewn with districts that have made mistakes as relates to implementing technology for instructional purposes, mistakes from the wrong devices to rollout plans to just how the whole thing's managed. And so we've been very purposeful on a slow early pace with a rapid finish. And so I appreciate what they're doing, where we're going. And so at this time, it's my pleasure to turn over to Jen and her team to give you an update of where we're at.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kellogg. Good evening, President Nestor Baker, members of the board, fellow administrators, and community members. We are very excited to share where we are in our implementation of the Learning and Teaching Roadmap. Tonight, I will be providing you with an overview of how this aligns to our strategic plan, our process, and the rubric that's guiding our work. Then, I'll turn it over to Greg Lewis, Stephanie Donafee, and a few of our power users and power students to explain how the implementation has impacted learning in their classrooms. Last fall, our community described what teaching and learning should look like as the strategic plan was developed. These included practices that are student-centered, teachers using research-based instructional strategies that promote 21st century skills, technology as an essential tool for learning, an infrastructure that can support technology, and finally, that our students have access to technology. I think you're seeing the theme, the technology theme. We began to develop our roadmap, which focuses around what and how kids learn. And I love this picture because that's really at the center of our work. Yet what we have to have is every other group being a part of this work. So when we had our learning labs that met throughout the course of last year, everyone was represented, from facilities to tech support, teachers. We had a very broad range of people involved. We developed a mission statement to create learning environments that support student success, in which students are empowered through innovative, relevant, and rigorous experiences to prepare them for career readiness in a dynamic global economy. Okay, now everyone knows a mission statement. Okay, that's kind of a lot of words, and who's really going to remember that or be able to say it off the top of their head? So we thought, okay, what's going to be tangible? What's going to help everyone understand what it is that we're trying to do? So, like good teachers do, we developed a rubric. As we talked through this, we wanted our teachers to be able to ask quickly, is this lesson student-centered? How engaging is this for my students? Do I have the right resources? Is this lesson challenging, rigorous, and relevant? And is this done in a safe environment most conducive to learning? And we actually, and Stephanie is going to talk some about the professional development that we've done with our power users, but one thing was to align this with the teacher standards that are part of the OTES framework. And even one of our power user principals or one of our power teachers said, I was getting evaluated because I'm volunteering, and I thought, okay, this is overwhelming. You know what? I'm just going to focus on the Learn rubric. And the principal who did her observation said, you know what? That was so simple. Everything was there. It all made sense. And that was really telling for our power user to realize this isn't more. This isn't something else. This lies within the framework of great teaching. So this is a very powerful tool that our teachers have seen a lot. They see it on Waiver Day. It's really something that we've used as a focus. Factors for our success. The Learning Lab also identified these, and 4 of them we're going to highlight today. Certainly, we're sharing the roadmap. This was done over the course of the year with the board. I believe we had 2 presentations last year. Dr. Kellogg met with and did staff chats across the district last spring, telling them that this was coming and that this work would begin this year with our power users. Also, we've been meeting with principals. They've been meeting with their staffs as we plan phase 2, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. Our power users will speak. It does focus around equity of access, but right now I'm going to turn it over to Greg Lewis to talk about the information technology upgrades.
Good evening. I'm Greg Lewis, IT Director for the district. I kind of want to give you an overview of kind of where we've been and what we've done over the past few years, just so that you have an idea of the infrastructure that we've actually built to be able to support the 7,000 plus devices that we've actually getting ready to deploy. The first one was a core upgrade. A couple years ago, we did a phone upgrade to the district. And one of the things that we did is we actually upgraded all of the internal, there we go. All the internal core switches that we actually had to be able to support something that's coming in the near future, which is this. The second thing that we did is we figured out that the communications between the buildings actually needed to be updated. So one of the things we did is we actually partnered with the city with the WeConnect piece and was able to actually lease 2 strands of fiber to 11 of our buildings today that we could get to. And that's a huge piece for us because what that does is that eliminates the month-to-month contracts with AT&T and allows us to actually have basically a very fast internet, upwards of 10 gigabits between those 11 sites. The other thing we did is we were up for renewal on AT&T contracts. So one of the things that we knew was wireless was going to become important. So what we did is we negotiated with AT&T and was able to get all of our sites, remaining sites, up to 1 gigabit. So that was a real huge piece for us to be able to, one, have communications between the buildings at a much quicker piece. We then actually implemented our own private network. If you can think of where the AEC building is, we can go to South, we can go to Blendon, we can go to Transportation and Whittier without crossing any public property. So what we were able to do with some capital dollars was actually bury fiber so that we then own that fiber between those buildings, saving the district a lot of money on month-to-month contracts on that. We then started to think about what is the wireless going to look like for us. And one of the things that we looked at is a couple of different models within the classroom, and how are we going to do that? How are we going to put wireless in the classrooms? What we decided to do is put a wireless access point in every single classroom. And if you can think of some of the ages of some of our buildings, you can think about, wow, what kind of buildings we have between our classrooms. So our goal was to make sure that if they moved a cart and kids would bring their own devices, that we would be able to support multiple devices within that. So we actually have 917 wireless access points throughout the district today. We then talked about bandwidth leaving. Something that was real important for us as we move forward is cloud. You know, where are we going to go? What's the cloud going to look like? What is our internet going to look like? Where's the park testing going to do for us as we start moving to more online testing? So what we did is we actually increased our bandwidth by 30%. And what that equates to is we have a 1 gigabit pipe out to MEC, which is our internet provider. We then partnered with Time Warner to actually add another 300 to that, giving us a 1.3 megabit throughput to the internet, which will be real important as we move forward with the devices that we put in front of you tonight as some of the devices that we're actually using in the classroom today. The next thing we did is we needed to upgrade our firewall, which was real important for the district to be able to protect what we have inside today. The firewall that we previously had was maxed out. We had to do something. So what we looked at is what's going to be important in the future for us. That's going to be a redundant firewall and protecting the actual assets that we have within the building. So we actually put in a Palo Alto firewall, which is a state-of-the-art firewall today, which actually protects us against a lot of hackers. We're able to then turn off certain hacks from certain countries, and it gives us much better reporting capabilities that we have today. So that's in place today. It is a redundant system, and it also allows us to do a little bit of traffic between the two internet providers, like the iOS upgrade that came out on the Apple devices. This was real helpful for us to actually not saturate our internet provider and actually move some of that to a secondary one for that. We then had issues with our internet filtering system, which is an IBOS system today that we use. Same thing, single device, we needed to do redundancy on that. The system that we decided to use was IBOS, which gives us real-time reporting, which is real helpful for us for looking and seeing what kind of traffic is going on today. It gives us a much better reporting mechanism, and it allows us to actually see what the kids are actually searching and doing a lot quicker than we had in the past. Another piece that we put in with the roadmap was a network access control, and we're in the process of implementing this today. What this does is it allows us to, a teacher or a student, to bring in an unknown device into our network and for them to actually authenticate up against it so that we can actually then know who they are. We can then lift some of the security access on that, allowing them to maybe go to YouTube and some of the things that normally in a guest network we wouldn't allow. The last thing that we did is we created a Google Apps for Education for all staff members, and this is what is real important for us because this is what we believe that all the students are going to have access to and is key to this roadmap. I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Stephanie to kind of talk about the phase one that we had.
Good evening. I get to talk about the people involved in really implementing this. I think it's important, and I appreciate your remarks about the slow rollout of this, because without the infrastructures in place that Greg and his team put, it doesn't matter how many devices we have if they're not going to work or go out. You know, so we made sure that our infrastructure was very strong. And for phase one, we had over 90 applications for power users, which to us was very exciting. These were people who were really wanting to push things forward. And again, we had our very targeted teachers that we chose. So we have 18 power users in 6 buildings. One of the key things that they were supposed to do was identify a district solution for a device rather than all different devices in all different schools, something that as a district we could all work to support. So we test drove a couple different devices, and one of the things that they had to do was at the end, they had a survey to fill out about the devices and all the different tools we gave them to implement and how those things impacted their teaching in their classrooms. So what I'd first like to do is introduce our power users. Some of them were able to join us tonight. And I'm just going to go through, and as I call your name out if you want to stand up and be recognized, if you are here. At North High School for Social Studies, we have Lane Halterman, Damon Mollenkoff, and Sean Ring. At Genoa Middle School for Math, Victoria Alamo and Leah Gaines. At Hawthorne, we have 4th grade team of Chris Pointer, who does ESL, Ann Keene, Danielle Morgan, and Fred Knoll. At Mark Twain, we have Sarah Krimpaski, Kathy Conley, and Susie Smucker in the 4th grade. And at Wilder, we have a 3rd grade team of Beth O'Reilly, Dana Harmon, Elaine Morgansky, and Emily Berwinger. And at Amherst, we have a 2nd grade team of Miranda Lint and Kelly Stuckey. So, a little applause for all our power users. And, you know, they basically said, okay, we're open to what it is, and they all tried different things. And a few things that we did with them is we started with a book study called Inevitable, and it is about the mass customization of learning, which in itself sounds like an oxymoron. You have mass, but it's customized. So it's customization for everybody, and that set our headspace. We worked in the summer, had 2 full days of PD talking about the actual devices themselves, and worked through ways that it could transform their instruction and planned together for that. We worked with Schoology and Google, and Schoology and Google actually work together. One's a learning management system and the other's productivity tools. So they have a suite of everything that they need. We did job-embedded PD with them, which was part of what our educational technology coaches do, and I'd like to introduce them because they have been very key to helping this move forward, and that's Jennifer Fry and Kim Niles and Dave Hayward. You want to give a little wave if you don't want to stand up? They're very much behind the scenes, but without them, this couldn't have happened. We also had monthly face-to-face meetings where they would come and share what they were doing, some of their frustrations, some of their successes, et cetera. So we did a lot of PD with them. Some of the impacts that we had at the Power User Initiatives you'll see refer to the strategic plan and the goals very well. One was that with the implementation of research-based education, very student-centered to support the Learn rubric. And these are all pictures from Power User classrooms. We have an infrastructure that is capable of meeting the demands of the learning. We didn't have people trying to constantly be, kicked offline. We enhanced staff and community and student engagement by the use of technology. The students, as the teachers would report to us, were extremely engaged in the process, a lot of collaboration. There was a growth in student and teacher competencies in tech literacy. When we chose the power users, we were strategic in choosing not only the people who were rah-rah on the front, but some people who thought, I'm not sure if I am ready, and they are, and they have transformed in the most amazing ways. We've increased access to devices and digital content for both students and teachers, so it's not just about the device, it's about the learning with it, so the digital content that they can use, the digital content that they create. And for me, this sums up, this is one of our power users. We offered another class that they could take. It wasn't part of the power user agreement, but we offered it for any teacher in the district, and a number of power users took it. It was called Flipping the Classroom. And they did a reflection at the end, and I thought this summed up everything we were trying to do with this. What I have learned in the past few months has forever changed the teaching and learning that takes place in my classroom. With testing being so different, it will be hard to make comparisons based on standardized test achievement, but the learning I see in my classroom every day is all the proof I need to know this is what's best for my students. That is a teacher in her professional judgment knowing that this is the best way her students can learn. And once you know that, you have then the responsibility to carry that forward. I thought that was a very powerful statement. So we'd like to have a couple of our power users talk to you. The first one we have up is ESL teacher Chris Pointer, who's going to talk to you about the idea of gamification, which is, well, actually, I'll let him tell you. Come on up, Chris. There you go.
I can get PD on how to use this. Hi, everybody. Chris Pointer. I teach ESL at Hawthorne Elementary School. I'm a Phase 1 power user. I'm here to talk to you about the process of gamification, what it is and what it's not, and a quick brief rundown. First of all, why games? As you can see on the screen, 59% of Americans play games. Of those 59% that actually play games, roughly half of them have more than one gamer in their household. So this process really isn't geared to like my parents, the 45 to 50-year-old generation. The baby boomers aren't probably strong gamers. What this tells us is,
Going with that.
just throwing it out there. Yeah. What this does tell us is those people who are playing games. Can we have the next speaker? Those people who are playing games have multiple gamers in their house. So we're hitting the generation that we're really looking to hit. The 30-something and the 20-something are probably the first generation that's going to have a game console in their home because they want to play it, not for their kids. Gamification, what it's not playing video games in the classroom. I have no Xbox, I have no Wii. I do have approximately 12 iPads. Gamification is taking the curriculum that you have and using the concepts of game mechanics and techniques to engage and motivate students to foster the intrinsic motivation to push themselves and to achieve things on their own. It taps into the basic desires of anyone's need for achievement and sociological stature. So the red velvet, rope, so to speak. And a great example of this is lately in my profession, the term accomplished has carried a completely different weight of achievement and sociological stature that it may not have carried 2 years ago. Gamification plays on that, plays on the fact that everybody wants to beat themselves or beat someone next to them. And one way or another, you can motivate those students to find a different gear that they didn't know they have and engage in curriculum in a way that they didn't know that they could. So why gamification works? We're going to use Lil Mac here from Punch-Out, if any of you are a big fan. So we got here in the top left, we've got Little Mac. He's ready for school. Student arrives, ready to learn. Teacher's behind him, coaching him. Let's go. Let's do this. You got it. Here it comes. Student has some success. Confidence builds within whatever curriculum that they're working in. In this case, they earn badges. Maybe their name goes up higher on the leaderboard. Their social status increases. Eventually, gamification or no gamification, all students are going to struggle. They're going to reach that struggling point. The beauty about gamification is the student's able to fail without shame. The student's able to fail without consequences, without intimidation to try again. We all learn from failure. It's extremely positive. Instruction versus acquisition. Failure is not finite. That's the beauty about this system. Learning from failure empowers all of the students to take ownership of their own learning. And that's crucial. So what does that mean? The student asks for help, or the teacher gives it without prompting, which is what happens a lot. And the student trains. The student tries again, no consequences, at their just right moment. Kaboom, student success. Kaboom, just want to say it twice while I have the microphone. So confidence builds, enjoyment of learning, which is crucial. So I'll say it again, enjoyment of learning takes place at a pace that's comfortable for each individual student. It's customized for each individual student, and that's at a just right level. They're not keeping up with the assembly line, so to speak. They can have their peaks and valleys as need be, and we're here to support them. I guess that's it. Oh, but so I'm going to introduce the teachers from Mark Twain, I think now. Yes, I am. So Kathy, Sarah, and Susie. I got to have one of these from my wife. She would love me if I knew what to do with this.
Sure. Hello. We are the fourth grade power user team from Mark Twain, and we are so excited to be here to share with you our experience with the Google Chromebooks. We gave the students a prompt. We were learning about science and changes in the Earth's surface, and we gave them choices of things that they could pick to research on. So whether it was tsunamis or earthquakes or mudslides. They got to pick whatever they wanted and create a presentation or a report or whatever they wanted using the Chromebooks. So this is a little bit about what we did.
Well, first, we as teachers had some challenges, because I've been at this a while. I'm not a gamer. I'm not a gamer, okay? I don't have a gaming system. But I do love the technology. So, one of the hardest parts was to figure out how to think outside the box, and then to give up control, because these tests, and you got to make sure you get everything covered, and it's your job on the line. So that was hard. But we did it. We figured out ways to do it. And then we had to teach the kids the skills because they wanted to drop in video into their presentations. And they wanted to access these websites and make links and shorten up the addresses and things like that. So those skills had to be taught in little mini lessons so that they could do that. And then we had to find other ways to make sure that the areas that weren't selected, the topics that weren't selected, were covered. So I generally taught mini lessons on those things during the days and our mini lesson time each day, so that all areas of the curriculum, they had the opportunity to learn the information. And then we had to struggle to find time to debrief as a group, because the kids would start talking about, like, well, I'm studying earthquakes, and most of those happen in or around the Ring of Fire, sorry. But volcanoes happen there too, and tsunamis. And so they started talking about how, well, I learned about that. But we didn't get a whole lot of time to an opportunity to debrief and share our learning. So we're going to work on that as an improvement for next year. We need to make sure we set aside time specifically to debrief throughout the learning and research process.
Okay. So with all of these devices and with all of this came a lot of excitement. Student engagement went through the roof. The kids were all engaged. They were asking questions. Some of the most excitement happened for me when I actually took a deep breath in the beginning of October and went, oh, all this happened within, 9 weeks ago. They didn't even have a Chromebook. They had never touched a Chromebook, and wow, they just did all these presentations, and their excitement grew. Then the most fun was listening to them after they were done with their presentations, and students then created their own research groups because they wanted to learn more. They had piqued an interest from somebody else's presentation, so then they created their own little groups that they started searching and collaborating on their Google Docs, so that was really exciting. And I have with me three of our Power students that have really taken this on this year, so I'm going to get to ask them some questions. Can I take this off? Okay, girls. Turn around. Let's introduce you.
I'm Danielle. And
You ready?
I'm Hannah.
You gotta talk louder.
I'm Corey.
Okay. What did you do your project on?
We decided to do our project on islands.
And how did you choose this topic?
We had 12 to 13 choices, and we chose our top 3, and our teachers tried to get us our first or our second choices.
And what did you like about this project?
Working together as a team.
Were there any challenges you faced?
Trying to split the work evenly. This was my first experience kind of using technology. Trying to find ways to put the ideas together.
And what did you enjoy most about the project?
Presenting. Working together with other friends from other classrooms. When we got to Skype another 4th grade class with Chromebooks, and we showed them our presentation.
And we Skyped with Hawthorne, who was another fourth grade power user team, and they hadn't gotten to the point where they were using the Chromebooks collaboratively yet, so they wanted to see how they did their projects, so they were able to share across the district. Okay, how was this project different than the projects you've done in the past?
We used to have to write a lot, and this time we got to choose how to present. The last presentation I did was in first grade. We had to use poster board, and this time we got to use Google Docs. Last time when I did it in first grade, we had to do it alone. This time we got to do it in a team.
Hannah, how was this project different than what you've done in the past?
It was more exciting because we got to use technology and ask our own questions and search for information and work in a group.
Okay, nice job, girls. All right, this was an example of one of the projects that they put together, a couple slides that they did. So they asked questions, they went out and found their own research. They had guiding questions from us, but also able to extend and take their research in whatever direction they wanted. So they were able to collaborate together. And then they had to tie it into, they had to find some primary resources and tie it into other areas of the curriculum. So they were able to go out and find this and then presented to the whole fourth grade.
Thank you. And Susie has a student teacher, so I am sure this is unlike any student teacher experience any of us got to see. So thank you very much. Two of the things that I also heard from this team just in our sharing is that the teacher said I could have never taught them the amount of information that they learned on their own and to the depth that they wanted to learn it. When she has to shoo them outside for a recess, and they're like, oh no, but we want a researcher. Oh, he shared something about tornadoes that's really cool. Can we do a project on tornadoes? I mean, to hear that excitement about the content is just amazing. So what do we get to do now? We get to start another team in every building. That is our goal for phase 2, which will be between 2 and 4 teachers, 2 or 4 teachers. What we learned from this process, as Stephanie mentioned and Dr. Kellogg mentioned, this was very intentional. We did not want to have one person in this building and one person in this building because we knew that they would need a team of teachers to lean on, to grow from, to reflect with. So that's why we have chosen to continue with that approach. There are a lot of things that our building principals are considering because what we've done, we did select the power users at the district level, but this is really going to be done at the building. So our building leaders need to decide what's best for them, considering their building needs and goals, the continuity of student experience. So if you do have a 3rd grade team, fourth grade would be in the very near future. EdSite, that is a recent straight A grant that we've received, which we will be receiving about 1,200 devices with that, and our teachers have been participating in professional development separate from this work to learn how to evaluate digital content, and that is in collaboration with Ohio State. As one of our teachers mentioned, we do have those state tests coming in 4th grade and 5th grade science and 7th grade. Those will be online. We have a number of digital content pilots taking place right now. And also what our principals are looking at are the power user applications. Who were the people in their buildings who wanted to start this work in April? And then how can they be additionally supported? So those are the things we've met with the principals over the past several weeks to have conversations with them about where they want to take their building next. And then finally, future implementation over the course, as Dr. Kellogg mentioned in the beginning, it is a fast timeline. Over the course of the next 2 school years, adding 405 teachers and 3,000 student devices each year. Next year, that looks like about 3 to 5 teams per elementary. Our elementaries are smaller buildings. And then 6 to 8 teams at our secondary. We do have to take into consideration our capital refresh schedule, which was some of the funds repurposed to make this happen. And then by May of 2017, we will be fully 2-to-1 in all of our classrooms. And at this time, are there any questions, comments?
I finally get to speak about a topic that I know something about.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Awesome.
No, I actually have taken quite a few notes. First of all, I'm very impressed, and the reason is I do get to speak from experience on this from nearly a quarter of a century. I'm saying quarter of a century because I also want to back that up with, if you want to beat anybody, or if you want to beat me in Call of Duty in my house, you have to play on my consoles. Not my kids.
Mr. Poirier, did you
I'm
hear
just
that?
saying. But you know, I've had over 20 years in technology, and a couple of things are very interesting to me. First of all, I emphasize quite a bit in the businesses that I've worked in that technology is a means. It is not the end. Having come from banking and technology as an example, I always emphasize to people that it wasn't but a few decades ago that we were still using ink and ledger. We could still use ink and ledger today if things got really bad. So it's simply a means. It is not the end itself. In the school setting, the curriculum, the quality of the teachers, the eagerness and the excitement of the students will always outweigh these methods that are being used to teach with. The reason for that is that there's a reality, and Greg, I know that you're very familiar with this, there's a reality in technology. It's called Moore's Law. Moore's Law says that every 18 to 24 months, the capabilities of processors double. That's a law that's held consistent since 1970. That means that any purchase that's made today in your household, and you all experience this, is functionally obsolete, generally within 36 months, because in 18 months, it's already behind the times. In 36 months, it can no longer run the programs that have been created in the last 6 months. And these are the realities that corporations as well as school systems face. Because of that, and I think that it's very interesting from a technology perspective, the use of the Chromebooks and other virtual devices, most companies are completely satisfied. When I speak of most companies, I'm talking about most Fortune 1000 companies are completely satisfied with what is called an N-3 standard, N equaling now. So from a version control standpoint, your best hope at any point in terms of your technology acquisition is that you are no further than 3 versions behind. A lot of people might think that every company's got the most cutting-edge technology. Those of you in the audience that work in companies, you know that's not true, right? You know that you're probably working with a laptop that's 5 years old and you're hoping it turns on when you get into the office. You know, so these are realities of technology that we have to face when we're using this as a platform, in this case for teaching or as a platform for business. I think interesting about the project timeline, I think that it would be easy to be dissatisfied with the implementation time schedule. I would hope that this would be compared again to the realities of complex projects in the corporate workspace. A complex project, which I would qualify this as, in any enterprise that would be multiple times the size of this school district in terms of funds and resources it could levy against these projects, you're talking about a basic project in a complex environment being a minimum of 2 years, right? Day in and day out. Some projects and programs of higher complexity go 6, 7, and 8 years in large company settings. To be able to move forward a complex project in a very diverse environment in a couple of years is not only extremely aggressive, it's highly laudable. It's a very impressive timeline for anybody to meet. It's interesting as well, I think there's been this interesting association of technology with excitement. That's misplaced. Technology is not creating excitement in our classrooms, right? Natural curiosity that then is fed by instantaneous satisfaction and knowledge acquisition is what's exciting, right? I will show my age on this one. Who remembers doing reports at home and then having mom and dad saying you either needed to go to the library or maybe you're one of those lucky few, and I use lucky in bunny ears here, who had the Encyclopedia Britannica set in your house. Yes, I'm speaking to some of you, aren't I? And what a drag it was to have to sift through it and try and figure out, now this information is instantaneous. It's not the technology that makes the students excited. It's the satisfaction of that intellectual curiosity in near real time that we are all hungry to learn, to be able to learn about a particular item or a particular subject or a particular word in seconds versus searching for it is what generates excitement, not the presence of this technology in the classrooms. And I think that, what I also find interesting is that we sometimes, again, get ourselves in this position of ascribing mystical capabilities to technology that really aren't there. The cloud-based applications, I will tell you, are extremely important to us in the corporate setting. But one thing that's really interesting to me is that over the last 20 years, software corporations around the world have built over and over and over again all kinds of software applications that solve every kind of business, finance, marketing, and complex analysis problem on the planet. And can anybody tell me 20 years later what the most common application used for all of those problems still is? Excel? Did I hear an Excel from the audience? Yeah. So, again, we ascribe all of these superpowers, and people are still every day using spreadsheets to build complex, build solutions for complex business problems, right? So let's not lose sight of that when we think about all of these really, really cool technologies. They may not be the best technologies for our students in terms of the long run. I think that, I apologize for going so long on this, but again, it's something that I can talk about because it's in my space. And again, I feel qualified to speak on this simply because I understand what it takes to implement complex projects. I understand what it takes to stay current with technology. And if, I'll leave this almost as a rhetorical question, if Fortune 1000 companies struggle to stay within 3 versions of the latest technology releases, both in a physical asset, laptops, PCs, and an application asset, would it be right to have heightened or higher expectations of that of our school district? I don't think that that would be even remotely fair for us to be expecting, Buzz Lightyear type technologies, because frankly, that is an overinvestment in the type of assets and applications that would not be reflective of what our students are actually going to face in the business and work world or in the college setting. So great job, love the presentation, love the timeline, love what I'm hearing from students. Really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Hi. Hi. Can I ask the students a question? Of course. Girls, can I ask you something? So I'm thinking of my own kids when I saw some of the things you were doing. When you went home at night, did you show your parents any of this? Yeah?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, I showed them a lot. I showed them my whole presentation.
Do you think you taught them anything?
I don't know. I don't think so. No.
No. So they're pretty computer savvy then, huh? Yeah. Okay. Did anyone ask for one of these computers for a birthday or anything coming up?
No.
No?
No. No.
Well, I'm just thinking at my house, my kids come home and they're very computer savvy, so if I have an issue, I ask my girls. So, thanks very much.
I do have to say, Hannah was very excited about doing the presentation. She made sure she was here, let me email it to you. So she logged into her account, emailed it to me,
Mhm.
And it was such a powerful thing, and how excited she was about the material, how well she knew it when I asked her questions. And I just thought it was a great conversation.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Fantastic.
Good, good, good. All right, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it very much.
Carol or Rick?
Jen, or maybe Stephanie, one of you said something. I just said, get a little feedback on this. First, Greg, I think your portion was really helpful to go through, to talk about building the foundation of this house. Because I would not naturally think of all that. I mean, Mr. Byrd would think of that, and you know, you heard the challenge to, what's the name of the game? Game of Thrones, what is it? I would challenge him to come and play Pong at my house. Which tells you a little bit about where I am on this. But that was really helpful. Stephanie, Jen, one of you said something about that there were some teachers, power users, that were all in, raised their hand, ready to go, and some that, you know, stepped 3 steps back and not me. Could you just, and you said yes, and now they're on board. Could you just flesh that out a little bit? What turned them? What excited them? What did you hear? Not anecdotally, but do you remember talking to any of the more resistant power users?
Well, and I think a lot of it came out in the summer when we did the inevitable book study, and teachers would say, I can't see that this is going to happen, or, you know, I'm not really understanding how this could happen. What, you know, I have this test and I have this material and I have all this to cover, and how is this really going to look? But I think once they started, and Stephanie, you can speak to this too, started to see those small successes where the students were engaged, they quickly understood it. You know, another principal said, oh, well, you know, maybe we can give devices to our 4th grade students, but the test is only, you know, for phase 2, but the test is only in a month. Like, oh, that might not be enough time. And the other principal said, you don't underestimate those kids. They will pick it up in a month without question. So I think it was seeing some of those small successes and really building that team environment. I think other team members kind of helped pull them along to see. In one of our buildings that's not here tonight, there was one who was very ready to go, and she fully supported her teammate in this process, and they spent a lot of time together trying out new things, again, just in small situations to build that other teacher's confidence in using the resources.
Okay, thank you.
More specific?
Yes.
One other thing that I think was key was the work that the ed tech coaches did with the job embedded PD. I mean, literally going to the classroom, working with those teachers, saying, offering suggestions, how perhaps you could do something differently, and doing it in a very supportive way of taking that risk. Because, you know, as teachers, we want to be right all the time and know the answers. And for a lot of people, you know, you're afraid to make a mistake in front of your students, and just saying, I've never done this, and the students were very supportive back. So I think that having people in the classroom supporting them, and now our current power users can help the phase 2 people implement as we go forward. I think that was one of the key factors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The only other piece I'd ask about, Jen, is, listen, I know it's not universally lauded, the timeline. I mean, I get that. I happen to think, Richard, I think Mr. Byrd is right. I just, with the foundation of the house that was being built, and all of the learning and the development, and then power users, and then and support, I've shared with our superintendent, we just need to have one of these in every kid's hands. But that's just my my inability to sit still sometime. I just don't think that that would be really appropriate. And I really appreciate you saying, Richard, that because I've seen it in my own kids' eyes. Now I'm speaking personally. 7th grader and a 5th grader. Yeah, 7th grade, 5th grader. It really is not this thing that is in front of them. It's when they click in and they get this answer and it's like all over, and that's what got them excited. I really think that's a good distinction. Thank you for bringing that out. Here, I'm sorry, all that preamble. This is my, I don't know how to say this other than just say, in the next phase, in the next phases, couple phases, are there any schools that are left behind? Or do we need to get, are there any schools out there that are not getting users and devices and people being trained? And is there anything out there that we need to know about something is left behind?
One of the things, we do have a team starting in January at all of our buildings. I will say with only 12 teachers downstairs and speaking with the leadership, they will be the beginning of the next school year, and it will be all 12 of them. So our preschool will not be in January. So that's one. But one of the things in our secondary buildings, we only have the 2, at North and Genoa, which is why they're on kind of an expedited timeline, if you will, to have 8 over the course of the next year. So as you see, a phase 1 at the beginning of the year, that could be 1 team at a small school like Point View, yet it would be 3 at a building such as London. And so that it would make sense and everyone can be aligned. But no, that's what we definitely wanted to do. We knew, I wouldn't say last year at this time, but 6 months ago, that phase 2 would include every building. It was without question. It was just, okay, how are we going to make that look and how are we going to make that happen? And it isn't one person, as I mentioned before, it is a team. That's something that secondary will have to decide. Is it, 4 of their sixth grade social studies teachers, or is it 4 of their 10th grade math teachers? That's something that the building leadership will have to evaluate and make decisions around.
Thank you to the 3 of you. I think it has I personally think it has a stellar future for this district, and I appreciate all your work. And to the girls and teachers, and thank you for coming tonight.
Hey, Rick, I just want to piggyback on something, because I think it's really important to make these ties and these correlations between this particular program and kind of comparisons to what it's like out in, for lack of a better term, the real world, right? In the corporate and the business sector. I'm gonna serve notice right now. If anybody is ever surprised that there is resistance or hesitance on the part of power users and ultimately on the part of teachers in the adoption of these technologies, you need to understand that the greatest single impact to implementation of those technology solutions out in businesses is end user adoption. I mentioned Excel. Is Excel better than these multi-gajillion-dollar applications that have been developed by these large software? No, it's not. It's not even remotely better. There are known bugs. There are known issues. So why is it that people just don't flock to the newest technology? It's because people, period, have difficulty with change, right? And I think that there's this mistaken impression that, first of all, it's not Field of Dreams. If you build it, people don't just come running, right? They don't show up to adopt it. The other problem that you have is that people struggle with change. They build their rituals and their processes around tools that they know will work. So it should come as no surprise that technology adoption could be a challenge, and technology and technologists and implementers of technology are not in the business of changing human behavior. If we were, our projects would be a lot more successful. But you can't force people to change. You have to be presenting it in a way that it adds value, and it is better than whatever the alternative or option is. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And it's not a value judgment or a statement on the person that is struggling to adopt that technology. It just is a reality, again, of human behavior.
Yes, could I move from the technology to the actually teaching and learning and what the kids are doing in terms of learning? I love the fact that these three, apparently there were only three that got together and did the team approach on this report, and I'm assuming that some of these are probably larger than three groups.
I believe, I'm sorry, you're talking about the student groups from the
teams.
presentations? I believe the largest group was 4. Is that correct?
Okay.
You had one of a couple
Five,
groups of 5?
sometimes
Okay.
3 to 5. Great, great, great. My question, I guess, is to what degree do we always do the projects in terms of teams? And when, what percentage is done individually? And then, of course, in terms of teams, I'm assuming they all get the same grade. So I don't know how that works. I just have a basic question about that in terms of the teams, if you could explain that maybe.
It depends on the subject matter.
Mhm.
We've been primarily using social studies and science. So you don't think I project well enough?
The broadcast.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's for the technology. For social studies, we've moved into, we started with a project on the prehistoric Indians of Ohio, because that's our curriculum. So 20,000 BC to about 1650 AD. And so we decided to break it up into people groups, the Paleo Indians, the Archaic Indians, the Woodland Indians, and then the prehistoric Indians. Each child got to pick, they found out a little bit about each people group from me ahead of time. Then they got to pick which ones they wanted to research. They became the experts in their people group. Then we put one for each of the 4 different people groups into a team to make a group presentation this time. Now we're currently working on the next project, which is the historic Indians. So we're looking at the Wyandot and the Delaware and the Shawnee and the Miami. There are 6 tribes that were primarily here in Ohio. Sarah and I have adjusted our project a little bit, and Susie too. And so we're taking it from, they're doing the research, they have specific things that they have to find out, and then we're going to tie it back to the language arts a little bit more this time, and all the nonfiction pieces.
And there are always groups doing this. That's what I'm getting at.
Well,
teams of students.
yes, there have been
And they get the
teams.
same grade together.
Well, we don't grade.
You don't grade.
In 4th grade, it's progressing towards the standards, meeting the standards,
All right.
that kind of thing. But they also had to do a writing piece, and they had a test afterwards to make sure that they had gained the knowledge. Then for those students who haven't, we've got some backup activities to give them the opportunity to relearn so that they had the opportunity to master everything.
So what percentage would you say they do as teams? And what percentage individually of learning?
Well, they each have an area that they become the expert in. So it just depends on the project.
Okay.
But then the presentations in the past have been as a team, and they each have, but they're still specifically responsible for certain pieces of information. And so if they were the specialist on the Paleo Indians, they did the slides about the Paleo Indians.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of value in terms of the groups, of the students getting together in terms of teams and kind of sharing and giving each other help, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably been a lot of value in that.
There has been,
All
it's
right,
been
thank
fun to watch them work together.
Yeah. All right, thanks a lot.
I just swallowed the wrong way. I'm not thinking of anything massively important to say while I look like I'm breathing deeply. I'm choking. There's just a couple things that I wanted to bring up. It struck me a great deal in the discussion that was going on by our presenters. Thank you all so very much. And from the board members as well, something that was told to me a few years ago that I think still holds very true, that when you're talking about technology, there are immigrants and there are natives. and it is very much a function of changing cognitive patterns. Those of us who are born to a particular language handle it and move toward change in a particular way that is different from those of us who come to a language through immigration. And technology is very much that way. Sometimes the immigrant and native statuses are determined generationally, and it's often that way, but not always. There are some of us who are natives no matter what. So we have immigrants and natives, and how we choose to implement has to take full account of each of our places on the spectrum of moving toward nativity. I also was struck by the fact that as we move through a very intentional and, in my opinion, highly appropriate approach to building not only the physical infrastructure and the virtual infrastructure, but the cognitive and social structure that goes with an implementation of this magnitude, I don't want people to believe that there isn't anything else happening. We have teachers utilizing technology, staff members, administrators using technology in a wealth of ways, a wealth of experiences, and a wealth of different teaching structures and teaching approaches and group patterns and individualized patterns, different ways of using technology in assessment, curricular delivery, research, all of the components that go into good teaching. Eventually, you know, our hope, our conceptual hope, is that technology is what I used to say years ago. It's just a tool. You know, I used to say, you know, why do we have computer labs? Do we also need pencil labs? Because it was a tool. But this is a tool that requires changes in our cognitive structure. And as we do that, as we move to that type of tool and then remove to it and remove to it and remove to it, as it changes, we have to be extraordinarily intentional about the foundations that are built to make that change happen. Thank you very much. I think that, in my estimation, the implementation is going as I expected and is achieving the success that I hoped for. And it also dovetails very nicely with the other efforts of the classrooms across the district. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to say thank you again to all of our Power users and our Power students and our Power parents. Thank you. If you would like to go at this time, but you are more than free to stay for the rest of the board meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here.
If I might give just a couple closing observations. First one would be this. Back when we started about technology and computer devices for kids, the driver was new state assessments that are going to be online. And we quickly made the decision that we weren't going to buy technology for state tests, we were going to buy technology for teaching and learning. And so it was interesting to me. I think I heard Park once in all of that, which was fabulous. So that would be one. Two, I appreciate the efforts to tie back to the community comments, the key themes from strategic planning, and the way to which the community talked about 21st century teaching and learning, the use of technology in classrooms. And this plan was an outgrowth of that community value. So that was important. Second observation, it's incredible what a group of highly motivated teachers will do in 9 weeks. 9 weeks. From gamification to fourth graders putting presentations together, some pretty wicked stuff in there. And there were some other good things too from some of the other Power users that I think are worth noting. That is in 9 weeks, so that's pretty quick. I've made this comment several times, and I've heard the discussion as technology is a tool. So what's the point of a tool? Make the work more effective and more efficient, right? You can hammer a nail with a rock. It's not terribly effective, and it's not terribly efficient. So what's effective? Can we reach more kids first time out of the chute with instruction? Can we engage more kids and reach them to deeper learning first time out of the chute? That's effective. Efficient is how quickly can we determine what level of learning they got to, and how fast can we repair any mislearning? That's what technology will do for us, make us more effective and more efficient. More kids learning it quicker and being able to diagnose and repair misunderstanding faster, right? The last one is the big one. It's the challenge of going to scale. I don't have a whole lot of concerns that our teachers and students can't get it like we saw tonight. My concern is on the Greg Lewis side and the professional development side and the resource side of things. Because the commitment side that Mr. Byrd was referring to and the resistance of users in the educational experience is we always start, we never finish. So as the new guy coming in who puts forward a plan for 2-to-1 device ratio in 3 years, it's kind of on our back now and as a board to say, we made this commitment. And I can tell you there are lots of staff members, I'm sure, sitting there saying, okay, let's see if the rubber hits the road. So this first effort of power users in this second round, these are important to us, really demonstrating that we mean it, and there's a long-term plan to this. If it falls off, if we don't stay committed to it long-term, you'll lose anyone going along the way. Happens all the time, and that's not what we want to happen here. So I'm hoping that the board's continued commitment and my shared commitment with them, staff will see, I'm kind of serious about this. This is really happening. The other side of that is we may have discoveries as we grow that cause us to alter the plan, not just in terms of the kind of technologies, but the experiences students are having. Right now, we've laid in front a 2 kids per 1 device ratio in 3 years. And I have some questions and concerns as I start to see what's happening. Is that going to be too high a ratio in some grade levels and too low a ratio in other grade levels? Are we going to have to adjust things? We're finding cloud-based computing using Google and Schoology as a nice repository to put digital content for kids to interact on, and a device like a Chromebook, which essentially is just a direct link to the internet, and cloud-based computing is enough for what we need. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in coming years. And that technology is changing. For example, I've discovered, and I'd like to play with one, that they now have a touchscreen one. So all of us are used to doing this. We can now do that on our Chromebook if we get the right device. So I think that going to scale is going to be the challenge for us, because the amount of people for PD, the amount of infrastructure support that Greg Lewis's shop has to put in place is going to be a big challenge. And some of that is in the background. For example, the selection of a device like this, if you talk to Greg, significantly limits the amount of touches his department has to do to get this device from purchase to a teacher's hand. It's different when you're talking about a laptop like that IBM over there or a desktop, right? That's a whole lot more touches going on in Greg's office. So these are some of the challenges going to scale we're going to have to do. And so we need to stay committed to this so that our staff sees that long term. And I join everybody else in thanking our students and teachers here this evening who are the innovators and the leaders and are showing us the way. The next round of power users and the future power users are going to benefit from that. So lengthy presentation. Thank you, staff, for putting it together, and to students, and looking forward to the update.
I just have one real quick question. How long does it take a new power user to get up to speed, to get ready to go? I know that you took nine weeks to, use it, but how many days or weeks have you?
Go ahead, Stephanie, you know better than I do.
Brand new person.
We started in the summer with a book study. It was a month-long book study. Then there were 2 days of full PD in the summer, multiple meetings during the month, and then it depends on where they were themselves. We did some things with what is your own PD want to look like, what things do you want to learn, and it was a lot of them focusing. And if you have somebody coming in at more of a basic level, their jump is going to be giant.
Stephanie, I'm sorry, outside of the curriculum part, just students, I think students and teachers, what do you think their time frame from getting this never used one to, I got the hang of this and I think I know what I'm doing?
2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
How's that?
It's pretty good.
A teacher will be ready to go, brand new.
Yeah, when they come in, you need your login. We have created step sheets on literally just how to open it, log in with your Google account, and get ready. And it's, I've had one for since summer, and I learn something new on it every day.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of how much you want to, if you're taking it, home with you or whatever.
Thanks. All right,
Anything else?
thank you.
Thank you. Moving on in our agenda to item 6. It's the first portion of public comments on the agenda this evening. In the first portion of public comment is limited to comment on items that are on the agenda this evening. And as with all portions of public comment before the board, speakers are limited to 5 minutes. We do have 2 people signed up to speak. The first one is Rob Wesley. And company.
And company. Good evening.
Company meant. Good one, Richard.
My name's Rob Wesley. I'm the president-elect of the Westerville South Instrumental Music Boosters. I'm speaking specifically on agenda item 12.01, and that is the donation of marching band uniforms, a drum major podium, and a wireless sound system. Total value of our donation is a little over $30,000. Marching band uniforms are expensive. So rather than simply announcing it, I thought I'd bring 3 of our members. On the far right is Lauren Seitz, our junior drum major. In the middle, Elise Wesley, junior sousaphone player. And then Ian Wesley, freshman trombone player. And Lauren is obviously wearing our drum major uniform, and Ian and Elise are wearing our band uniforms. About 3 years ago, we determined that we needed new uniforms. By the time we were able to replace our uniforms, they were 15 years old. Band uniforms typically go 8 to 10 years before being replaced, so they were quite far past their life. Over the past year and a half, we were able to raise $26,000 to buy those uniforms through fundraising, donations, as well as an allocation from our general fund. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the citizens of Westerville who helped us with all that fundraising, Wildcat Dash, Gingerbread Cottage, our fund drive in the fall, just to name a few, as well as the parents of the band members who contribute thousands of hours of volunteer efforts supporting the band. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the band members who work. Just a small anecdote. During band camp, which is held at South, which goes for 2 weeks, one of the football players was overheard to say, "Those guys are always out on that field walking around. Don't they ever stop?" So they went from 9 in the morning till 9 at night the second week of band camp. So with that, I'm proud to formally announce our donation to Westerville South of our marching band uniforms, a drum major podium, and our wireless sound system for the total of $30,413.98. Thank you.
Rob, thank you, and thank you to the 3 of you, the band members and the drum major, for showing up this evening to show us those uniforms. Thank you is insufficient. This is a remarkable, remarkable donation that you're making, a monetary donation and a donation of heart and soul. So thank you for the donation, thank you for the time and the effort, and it is a joy to know that we have parents like you. The second speaker for this portion of public comment is Louise Reese.
Good evening. My comments deal with the financial report on the funds that Bart has. And I don't know, Bart, I'd offer you my notes, but they were done in a hurry and it's in cursive. So I don't know, or an adapted cursive. So I don't know if you could read them. I could leave them with you. The first question that I have is you've listed $147,000 for total fund and $151,682 for the current balance. What is the cost, the total cost of the turf replacement? So when you actually go to replace all 3 fields, what is the total cost? And is this $151,682 just an amount, an annual dollar figure that you're moving into a fund for an eventual replacement? And is this amount going to be the same each year for how many years? The second question is, Could you please explain what the Educational Service Fund, which has $27,791.83, and what that's for? The third question is, when you refer to a fund for a school as being a public support fund, what is included in these figures besides the PTA dollars, which I'm assuming are part of that? If not, I'd like to know that. For example, Faust Elementary shows that they have $35,861.92 in their public support fund. And so I'm trying to figure out what all is included in that. My fourth question is, you list the Westerville City Schools Pepsi contingency that shows $69,856.54. What does this fund now support or pay for? My next question is, in several listings for the different schools, you list staff funds. Where do these funds come from? The next question is, when you list club activity, when you first list club and activity funds, do you, and here's a series of them, do you require these groups to submit spending or expense reports? What do you require? I just read an interesting article about what they now require by law in the state of Pennsylvania, and so I'd be interested in hearing what we require. Are these funds used to pay the staff supplemental contracts? And are all the funds in these accounts, I can't even read my own handwriting, used by the groups, or do they have money coming from other school support, such as that activity fund you mentioned, or activity fees that you mentioned? You've separated out into two schedules in your next section that you're taking action on tonight. The pay going to teachers for what I believe is mentoring, and you have two different schedules for that. And my last question is, why don't you do this for the supplemental contracts in each of the schools so that the public is aware of what each activity costs or the expenses that each group, like the marching band or orchestra or whoever is trying to cover? So those are the questions that I have, and I'd appreciate it if you could shed some light on them. Do you want the notes or? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Louise. And Bart, I know you have answers to at least some of those right now as we move. Yep, some of them. We'll see how many of them we can answer this evening. And then other information can be had from Bart as well. Moving on to item 7, the financial report of the agenda. Item 7.01 is the resolution to approve the financial reports and investments as of October 2014, and the financial report lists all funds ending October 31st. Could I have a motion on 7.01, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, Mr. Griffith, is there anything you would like to say?
Dr. Nestor Baker, members of the board, I'll give my usual report, and then I'll try to hit some of the questions that were asked. Year-to-date receipts for the general fund, $73.69 million. Year-to-date expenditures for the general fund is $49 million. The unencumbered fund balance for the general fund is $57.4 million. For all funds, which includes general fund, federal funds, any other funds we have, year-to-date receipts total $89.8 million. Year-to-date expenditures are $64.7 million, and the unencumbered fund balance, all funds, is $71.4 million. To try to answer a few of these questions, because I don't have answers to all of them, the turf replacement fund, which will be the next agenda, we basically, Mr. LaRose and I try to determine when we get ready to replace the fund, replace a turf in 3 buildings, we want to make sure that when this life is up, which could be anywhere from 8 to 12 years on this turf fund, that we'll have to replace it. And it could be as anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000 per field, depending on what it costs at that time. Who knows what it's going to cost? So what we are trying to do is to take any money that we've rented the field for or collected for, which we determine is not going to be enough. We tried to make sure we were setting aside money each year. So for these turf fields have been in place for 3 years. We've only transferred $65,000 a year. We talked about this last program. We were going to try to do $65,000 per year. So since we've only transferred $65,000, which we did in this, I think in the spring of this year, to get caught up, we're actually doing the other 100 tonight, so that we'll have a 3-year total since those fields have been in operation for 3 years. So that hopefully in 10 years from now, there could be $650,000 there, which isn't going to be enough. At some point, we may have to add more funds to cover those. I mean, who knows? I mean, right now, we're trying to put at least $65,000 a year into those funds for future use. The board could determine to do more later. But that's why that money is being transferred in there. Public school support, I think you're referring to the 018. Those are typically principals accounts. If you're referring to 018 account, those are typical principal accounts, but they're also principal account to be used for different, you'll see one for Alcott, Amherst, Carrington. So each one typically has a principal support. So you'll probably see 26 or 21 of those in there for the principals, which are usually fundraisers that the money comes in. It's 018 fund. It's not general fund money. It's 018. It's either from donations of, maybe the PTOs support, or they do sales, but it's principal support money that they can do what they need to support the students in those particular schools. Pepsi Challenge money, if you remember the Pepsi, there is it's called Pepsi Contingency. We negotiated a contract. This is the second, there was one prior to me coming here. We renewed one. We get $50,000 per year that goes into Pepsi makes a donation. This is the last time, as well as one-time scoreboards. But there's $50,000 in there per year. I believe 25,000 of that is divided up into the schools. The other 25,000 basically is under the superintendent's control for special projects that he wants to do. I know one of the things we're using that money for right now is to pay for the volunteers, so that the schools wouldn't have to have the expense of background checks for all of our volunteers. So that's one of the things we set aside that money to use for background checks, to try to offset some of the expenses for the school. Club activity funds, I'm not quite sure that question I'll have to get. I know one of the questions that you were asking, if you're asking, is where did the club activity money go? 2 years ago, when we came up with pay to participate fees, it was the goal of the district to try to come up with at least half of that funds coming from the community. In other words, the general fund would pay half, the other half would come from the community. They tried to go through and figure out what those either curricular or extracurricular fees would be. In other words, if sports is in one fund, extracurricular like chorus, band would be in the other. They tried to come up with a way that anything that had a supplemental paid out of it, we would try to recover at least 50% of that. 50% paid by the general fund, 50% collected by the users. So I know one of the questions is, well, if I collect, if the golf team only has 12 members and they pay the same thing as a football, there's no way those members are going to collect enough to cover what that sport costs a year. That money goes into one fund as a total. It goes into the general fund. So when the parents pay half of those fees, it goes into the general fund to offset all of the supplemental fees. It's not specific by sport or by activity. It goes into one general fund. Okay.
Bart, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious, has that historically been the case, or was that?
No, it wasn't.
4 years ago?
We started that 2 years ago when the district failed levies. They tried to at least say, listen, we'll support half of it, but we need the other half raised from pay to participate fees. So they come up with those total dollar fees based on what would half of the supplemental fees cost. And that's kind of how the different fees were determined.
That was after
The levy
the
failed.
decision was made to move those monies out of those special funds, the athletic director funds and all those areas, and move them into the general fund, correct?
We didn't move anything out. In other words,
Well, we received them as.
Right. We took all those fees that were collected and put them into the general fund receipt. Trying to think what else I was on here. I'm not sure, Ms. McAdams, if I know I missed a couple, but I didn't quite understand your question, so I'll get with her after the meeting.
Okay.
But unless you remember the question, you want me to answer it.
Well, I got the first several written down accurately. The last two I didn't write accurately, so I would not. I would ask that you touch base with Louise
I
and
will.
find out what those are specifically.
I will.
I'm afraid my handwriting did not keep up.
Mine didn't either. There was something on mentoring, but I'm not sure what that one was, because that's. That was in my report? Oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. Somebody will. I don't think I'm going in later.
Yeah.
HR.
No, that's an HR, that's probably an HR one.
I think it is.
Okay.
I was asking why we don't separate out what the supplemental contracts cost and at each of the different buildings. And what they are.
Okay, other than that, any other questions that I didn't cover that you
Questions
want
from
to
the
know?
board?
Bart, just, the list of supplemental contracts is in the teacher contract, correct? Which is a public document. So it lists all the supplementals and the schedules that those are paid at.
It does.
And those are assumed to be available to those schools regardless of school. The difference might be whether or not someone has a staff member who's interested in leading a particular supplemental.
Right.
The other thing I understand is that we've given principals some allowance with a cap on it to create supplemental positions for clubs that are specific to their building. One that comes to mind for me might be the fishing club that's at one building. But all the buildings at various levels have that same little bit of latitude with a cap on how much they can do. So all the supplementals are available in that teacher contract, am I
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Comments on the financial report and investments? Bart, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Dr. French?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes, item 7.01 has been approved. Moving on to the agenda to item 7.02, this is the resolution to approve the fund transfer from the Capital Improvement Fund to the Debt Service Fund in the amount of $2,977,012.50, and from the General Fund to the Turf Replacement Fund in the amount of $100,000. Could I have a motion on this, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, I will turn this over to the treasurer. Again, you covered the turf replacement piece already, but might as well hit it again.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board, the transfer, I'll go to the debt service first. This is the permanent improvement loan that was, I think, passed in 2010. This is the debt replacement. We do this annually, so this is an annual, this particular amount is the $2,977,000. It goes, we transfer into debt service fund so we can pay the debt service. Again, the $100,000 is the turf replacements. It catches us up for the last 3 years. So basically, there's been $65,000 donated each year of the last 3 years at this point to make up the, and it is deposited into the 003 fund specific for turf fund. And this is, at the pleasure of the board. At some point, if we don't want to do that, we don't have to. This is just an annual amount that I'll bring to you, and if we want to do it, if not, fine. But at some point, we're just trying to make sure we have enough money to cover their turf fields at a point when we need to replace them.
Questions or comments?
Just a comment about the turf item specifically. When I came onto the board, obviously taking on the facilities and operations liaison role, spent time with Jeff LaRose. He walked me through the process of the thinking that had gone into the pocketing of this money specifically for turf replacement. I think a couple of things that I've learned, over the last couple of months and reaching out to a couple of peers on other school boards. First of all, we're relatively unique. I know that we've also been including in that formulation what we would have spent on maintenance as it related to striping and cutting and all those types of things. Many of the suburban school districts are not doing that, that have installed turf. It is a non-durable good, right? It has a lifespan. We don't know what it is, and that's another thing that I got back in speaking actually with somebody out in Dublin, one of the first artificial turf fields. Nobody knows how long they'll last. The vendors tell you X number of years, and with the way that technologies have gone, sometimes they will last substantially longer. So we can't predict the lifespan, but we do know it's limited. So I think it's a great approach. I think it's very prudent. I think it's a responsible way for us to manage a cost that could be substantial in the future. So I'm glad that we're staying on top of it. I support it.
Other comments or thoughts? I hear none. Bart, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. French?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes, the fund transfers have been approved. Item 8 on the agenda is the personnel consent agenda. Could I have a motion on this evening?
So moved.
Thank you. There's a second?
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, John, Mark is coming to the
Mr.
podium
Hershiser
this
stepping in. Mr. Smetzer's decided to visit his condo down in South Carolina.
evening. Joys of
And I did let him know that it was 62 degrees here today. So I didn't tell him about the wind.
Don't tell him about the wind, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't go there. Thank you, Dr. Kellogg, Madam President, members of the board. This evening's consent agenda is relatively light compared to some of the agendas we've had recently. We do have some resignations, including one of our school nurses, a couple supplemental contracts, some substitute positions. We have 4 leaves of absences, 2 short-term and 2 long-term maternity leaves. There are some contractual status changes. We had a situation where we had an individual who was on a leave who has agreed to come back for part of that and help us in filling some FTE there. And then on the classified side, we have some changes in routes that is part of the bid process after the start of the school year, and some of the routes, the shakeout on that. So there are some there. We have a few one-time payments that are contractual with our OTES and our mentors. We do also have a situation where we have an occupational therapist who's going to be on leave, and we have a part-time therapist who has agreed to help us, and that's an extremely difficult area to find people. So she's agreed to work beyond her part-time contract, so that shows up as a one-time pay as well. And then we have some employment items with some homebound tutors, various supplemental contracts with our winter sports underway, and our resident educator, which is contractual as well.
questions or comments.
I have 3 questions. This might, hi, Mark. Sorry.
Carol.
The first question is on 8.06, our one-time payments. Again, we're asking to approve, you're asking us to approve after the fact, after the work has been done. What is the reason for that? I'm sure there's a reason for that.
8.06, the change of assignment?
Yeah, 8.06, one-time payments.
One-time pay license.
Well, that's not 8.06 on this page. I'm looking. The first one is for work that in November with the OTES. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, that's one, yeah. It was done, yeah, it was done in November. So why wasn't it asked for approval before November?
It appears, and I'll have to double check and get back with you, but it appears as though with the hourly rate and the specific number of hours, the ones, they did that work, and it's coming to you for approval with the OTES. I'll have to check that.
I know you probably don't have the
Yeah.
exact answer, but
It looks as though, based on the fact that the hours are different for the individuals, you have 2 the same and 1 different on that particular item, I'm wondering if we would have known what those hours were prior to November.
And that's what I'm speculating, is that until the work was actually done, we didn't know the hours, and we brought it. And I think part of that is the one board meeting at the end of November made it a little more difficult for some of these. There were some resignations and some changes you can see in some of the other sections that were October 20th. By the time that gets processed, in one meeting in November, we're at November 25th.
okay.
Or
just-
4th.
You know, just let you know that's a concern always with me, and I'm sure you know that. But that needs to be done previous to, you know, if at all possible, brought to the board in advance. Then the second question is, we have a person that's doing marching band director as a supplemental contract. Marching band director and a tech. The same person's being paid 2 supplementals. What's the difference, and why 2 supplementals for that one? That's 8.11. I think it was quite a bit of money, if I recall.
Which school is that at?
South. Also, the season's over for marching band. I mean, are we approving this now, or what's the story on that issue?
I'll have to get that back to you on that, Carol. I'm not even seeing that one under 8.11.
Under South,
Yeah.
8.11.
It's like the third name under South.
They are two different responsibilities, two different job expectations. The difference between assisting marching band director. I'm going to guess the marching band tech probably, I'm going to guess, has to do with the design of the marching band's show presentation. So there's technology, I'm guessing there's technology associated with designing that, and that might be that person's responsibility, and then, which is outside of working with the kids, and then you come onto the field to direct that.
Well, there should be job
And-
descriptions for both of those, and.
Yeah, and I see that too, and along with what Dr. Kellogg's saying, a lot of times, since the reductions in supplementals a couple years ago, where there were significant reductions in supplementals across the board, what coaches are doing is they're dividing up contracts. And if you look at that, it's not two full-time positions, if it's the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's a
It's
0.5
0.5 and 0.25. So a lot of times, in addition to what Dr. Kellogg's saying, we have individuals that divide up those supplementals so that they can have the number of people that they used to have at a lesser rate. So I see that a lot with our coaching, along with the band, as you've indicated.
And that's the reason we're getting it at this point in the year, do you think?
No, I was answering the question as to
Yeah, well, I'm trying
the
to
two
adjust it,
positions. Yeah.
Okay. I think also under 811, we have a newspaper advisor that we're paying a supplemental from December. Is that prorated? That's not, I mean, is that for the full year, or is that just from December to May? A newspaper advisor,
Which building is that?
8.11 Heritage.
I would imagine that's for the entire year, but I'll have to get back with you on the length of time for that supplemental.
Okay, I'd like to pull 8.11, please, as separate.
Want a separate vote on 8.11? All right.
Those are my three questions.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Bart, would you please call the roll on the personnel consent calendar up through 8.10?
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. French?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes. The personnel consent calendar up through 8.10 has been approved. 8.11, could I have a motion on this one, please?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Bart, would you call the roll on this one?
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. French?
No.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes. 8.11 has been approved. We move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is our policy section. We have nothing under policy this evening. We have nothing under item 10, which is old business this evening, nor do we have anything under item 11, new business this evening. However, under item 12, we do have 3 items. 12.01, the donations this evening. Could I have a motion on donations, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, with double motions.
I'll do second.
Everybody wants to move on donations. Okay.
It doesn't matter.
We have a motion and a second. Are there comments or questions regarding the donations?
Just, as always, a huge thank you. I'm always just humbled to scroll through this list every time we meet and just see the diversity of donations. You know, I think sometimes, again, we get a little lost on, you know, athletics and those things that are highly visible, particularly this time of the season, as we had some teams go through the playoffs, Westerville Central. But, when you look here and you see, books and colored paper and lights for theater, and it's just really cool to see how the community is engaged with our school systems, and not, just with their students coming through, but through their contributions. So many thanks to all of those that made donations.
Other comments? With our thanks, would you call the roll, please?
Dr. French?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes, the donations have been approved with thanks. Moving on to 12.02, this is a resolution to appoint John B. or Jack Shinnock to the Library Board of Trustees of the Westerville Public Library. Could I have a motion on this appointment, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it is the school board's responsibility to approve the individuals who serve on the library board. The library is a school district library. That's its boundaries. It doesn't mean we own the libraries, nor that we in any way own their tax levies or their books or anything else. However, we do have that shared responsibility together. The library board does advertise for and interview and make its recommendation as regards who it would like to have serve on the Board of Trustees of the library. Questions or comments?
By way of our votes and motions, we can't stage any kind of a coup at the library, can we? Or, no?
Is that something you're interested in?
I was just curious.
We could say no. Yes, we could.
I would assume that we wouldn't.
We have not.
Excellent.
We could choose to do that, but we have not.
Very good.
I just love when people step up to serve
Yes.
in the community. And, it just these positions are just such unsung kind of deals. And so I just think it's awesome. Thank you. And where is he here?
I doubt it.
You thought maybe we'd vote him down?
Well, because this is,
You thought there might be a coup, so he didn't come?
I'm looking at,
Yeah, we're going to vote no and put Richard in. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
No. No.
never mind. That's all I'm going to say.
Bart, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Dr. French?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes, there is no coup this evening. 12.03 is the resolution to approve the purchase of school buses. Could I have a motion on this, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Third, fourth, yes. So we have multiple motions and seconds on the resolution to approve the purchase of school buses. And you ready to talk?
I am.
All right, take it away.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. This resolution before you is for the purchase of 11 new school buses. The bus purchase is in our current 5-year fiscal forecast. The costs that the bids come in are within the budgeted amount. The bids that were sent out as a part of the Metropolitan Educational Council, MEC Consortium, along with 47 other districts. Cardinal Bus Sales was the determined vendor to be the lowest responsible bidder, meeting our specifications. It's my recommendation that the board approves the purchase of 8 54-passenger handicap buses and 3 72-passenger propane-powered conventional buses.
Would you address the lifespan of our buses, please?
Yes. Currently, we're at 14 years, so we start seeing that that's our maximum that we can run the buses. At that point in time, the cost to keep them up and running is way outweighs by the time you repair them and replace flooring in them, then body panels, and then you have to trade them in within the next few years. You get $2,000 out of a trade-in, and you got $10,000 in a floor. It really makes no sense. And then at that point in time, at 14 years, you got to worry about safety issues and stuff breaking down all over the city and whatever else. So we've seemed to maintain like a 37% cost per mile below the state average. So we kind of got this sweet spot. We feel that 14 years is really where we want our district to be. And we feel after that point, it's really a tough thing to keep things going and be cost effective at it.
And could you review what we do with the old ones again?
Well, we've seen NASCAR, people buy them for NASCAR. We've seen them for Ohio State, tailgating. So we've seen, but generally we either trade them in or we sell them on govdeals.com.
Right, okay,
We auction them off like on a live auction.
right.
Could you bring a picture in of a
NASCAR
NASCAR
school
bus
bus?
the next time
No,
you?
yeah, I could. I think we have a group of police officers that bought one, and they put recliners in it and all that.
Approximately how much are you getting on an average on that .gov site?
Yeah, around 3,000.
3?
Yeah, 3,000.
Thanks.
So,
And how does the bid process work?
basically, we take pictures and we post it right online. Oh, the bid purchase process.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure, sure. What we do for our district, we basically just have to propose what kind of buses we're looking for, whether it be handicap, conventional, transit. Transit are the flat nose buses, conventional are the ones with hoods on them. What style engine, maybe if we want them gasoline powered, diesel powered, propane powered, natural gas. And all the districts submit all their information, what they're looking for. And then we also put in what buses we have to trade. And then they send all it back to us districts, to all the districts. And then basically it's a giant Excel spreadsheet. And we pick, it's like a big a la carte. You start picking, so there's a base price for what the basic bus would be. And then you start putting what you want in them. So.
So you guys leverage the purchase power of a competitive bidding process as well as collectively doing that amongst a large number of school districts to enhance the cost effectiveness of the whole process as opposed to just going out on our own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With 47 districts and, just say we bought 11 buses, it really adds up, so they can probably cut their market quite a bit. Yeah. So, any other
I do
questions?
very much appreciate the efforts that you've gone to cut costs and to do the turnarounds more quickly as we look at, egov.com or whatever it is, org. Anyway, the sales site. eBay for buses.
Sure.
I appreciate all of those approaches that you've put into play. You were full of information one day when the board came to visit and showed us an awful lot about transportation that I think most people have no idea of the efficiencies that operate within that department. And I would hope that, John, as we go through the months to come, it would be helpful to bring transportation back to give some overviews of the way transportation in this day and age actually works.
Sure. We'd really enjoy that opportunity to shine a little bit.
Will these 8 or 11 buses take care of you until next year? Are you going to ask for 11 next year, or do you know what the plan is for the
Yes.
future?
We're at the end of our fiscal 5-year, is that right? So we're getting ready to start. So it will be, I believe, the next buses group are 11 as well.
Okay.
On the next 5
So
years.
next year?
Yes. So every year we kind of look at the buses that we purchased 14 years ago and they come up. So the next ones that will come up, I'll be asking for 11 more, so.
They typically try to replace the fleet every 14 years. That's where the 11 kind of comes from.
Right.
Yep.
And that is coming from the general fund, or the permanent improvement fund, not the general fund.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay.
Other comments before the roll? Hearing none, Mr. Griffith, would you call the roll?
Dr. French?
Yes.
Mr. Byrd?
Yes.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Velardo?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes, the purchase of school buses has been approved. Second portion, thank you. The second portion of public comment is for comments for the good of the order. Comments, as I mentioned earlier this evening, comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. We do have a few individuals signed up this evening. Rob Wesley, back for seconds.
I am back for seconds. Again, my name's Rob Wesley. I am the president-elect of the Westerville South Instrumental Music Boosters. I had a few more comments to make that weren't pertinent to donations on the marching band. wanted to brag a little and want to beg a little. The bragging is to tell you about the South Marching Band season that ended on November 9th. The weekend of November 8th, November 9th, the band literally went from one end of the state to the other. They competed Friday night in Brunswick, up near Cleveland. I'm proud to say they scored a superior rating in the OMEA state finals. It's the highest rating. For the seniors graduating, they had four, if they marched as an 8th grader, they had 4 superiors out of 5 years marching. So the next day, not even 24 hours later, they were in Cincinnati competing in the MSBA finals. We didn't make the top 10, but we did have our best score of the year in that circuit. We also had 3 superior ratings at other marching band competitions. We were the reserve grand champion and the fan choice at the Westerville North competition, and we finished second at 2 other competitions. In regards to our staff, I wanted to read all their names because they work their butts off. John Laswell is our second-year director. He's been with us 2 years. Bill Rulin, Jessica Kelly, our assistant directors. Drew Brown, battery. Joshua Perk is in percussion. Bob Knowles is our front ensemble. And Jenny Knox is our color guard. So to answer your question regarding those supplementals go to support those 7 individuals.
Oh, I know that very well. Thank you.
So, and I would also point out that the hours they do, that totals to less than minimum wage for the number of hours they put in a season. Weekends are typically 12 to 16-hour days, both Fridays and Saturdays. Now the begging. Over the last 4 years, we've had 3 band directors, 4 if you count the fact that we had a supplemental-only band director 1 year and a concert band director separate. Because of that, our instruments have fallen behind in regular repair, regular replacement. I shouldn't say regular repair, they're being repaired, but regular replacement and addition as the bands have grown. The boosters have formed a committee to help Mr. Laswell. First, we're inventorying all of the instruments we have, so we understand what we have, their state of repair, and their age. Second, we're helping to put together a prioritized list of band instruments that we need, both marching band, but also concert, wind ensemble, and jazz band. And once we have that prioritized list, Mr. Laswell will be submitting that prioritized list to the school principal for review in the budget process. Marching band uniforms are expensive. Musical instruments are exceedingly expensive. A sousaphone is $4,000 to $6,000 at the low end. We march 6 of them. Next year, I'm hoping to march 7 or 8 of them. We only have 6, and not all 6. The oldest is probably older than the youngest sousaphone playing it. So we also need at least 1 more tuba and a percussion battery. I'm not expecting it all to come out, but we will be submitting approximately $50,000 to $60,000 of requests. And that will maybe catch us up to where we should be. So that's the begging. I hope when that gets through into the budget process that it will be received with as much diligence as it can. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Peg, there's a line through your name. Did you withdraw? Okay. The next speaker is Amy Parker.
Hello, thank you. I'm here today because I attended a parent meeting last week for the orchestra. And I'm voicing concern about this because it's been a source of frustration for the last 3 years writing the check, but this year I had to pay $50 more because our son entered high school too. We've been paying pay-to-play fees for probably 5 years now, and that encompasses theater, track, cross-country, but we're made to pay pay-to-participate fees for orchestra. I have a concern about this because it's a curricular. Our kids are in class every day for this. They play in concerts for which they're graded. They do get to go to some competitions for which they travel, but parents provide the transportation for some of those, and some we get busing. We do fundraisers for orchestra in order to cover those things. We had a parent meeting to discuss the need for a fundraiser, an additional fundraiser this year, because we were told that we cannot charge ticket sales at our orchestra concert in December, which is a normal event. No one's turned away if they're unable to pay, especially if it's a parent and the orchestra director is aware of this, but the funding does tremendously help. We were told at the parent meeting that we can't charge because it's a curricular event and that the students are graded. My concern is, what distinguishes the difference between pay to participate and a class fee? Because I don't think we can have it both ways, and I think that that's what's being presented right now. If it's a curricular and we can't charge to come to events, then why is my fee pay to participate an extracurricular? It would seem to me it has to be one or the other. If it's a science lab, the fees go to pay for the lab. So if I'm going to pay a fee for a curricular, which is orchestra, I think those fees should cover the things that we do in orchestra. And this is my question for the funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. The next speaker is Louise Reese.
First of all, I've had a home computer for over 30 years, okay? And I took classes. I also worked with computers. As I said before, we had at one place of employment while I was working during college, we had a computer the size of a church organ, and it did one function. So yes, I understand how technology changes, chips get smaller. I also have an iMac at home that didn't become obsolete for 9 years. It was able to be updated, upgraded, and to run the current programs. Where we came into problems was the switch to iOS 8, which was to sync all of the devices together. So devices do have a use and a lot of uses for more than 2 years. I understand what Mr. Burt is saying, though, about in a business situation. I'd like to say that, and we do have gaming consoles and had them before our children came into the picture. The other thing is that when I look at these issues such as artificial turf, it may be hard for you to understand that I am a football fan, okay? That has nothing to do with why I asked that question. My issue is over how the money gets divided and whether the system that we're using that was put into place during an emergency crisis time in the school district's history of a failed levy, okay, we were told that these funds would be necessary in order to continue to provide the quality and level of service that we have been expecting all these other years that we did have. So when it's on the form as a participation fee, it's misleading to people, and then they become shocked when they hear it's an activity fee that is divided amongst all the activities. And where I become concerned is that I think it's a great plan to set money aside for the artificial turf. But my question is, and why I'm asking about the supplemental contracts is, as Dr. Kellogg said, not every school utilizes all of those supplemental positions. Some schools use more. In addition to that, the proportion of funds that when you're talking about a 50% split between the general revenue covering it and the volunteers that put in all the hours and the fundraisers to cover it, it seems very unequal in some respects. Okay, so if you're looking at athletics, cross country costs one thing, football costs another, and each of them has a different number of supplemental contracts that go with it. So when we're looking at something like orchestra that has one, that orchestra fee that we pay, that activity fee, as we just recently found out it is, that pays for that, you know, we look at it like there's approximately $3,000 that could have been available to pay for the $4,000 that we need to maintain the level of quality in that orchestra room. So we do get concerned about the changes. So it would have been nice if we had been informed of this prior to a month before trying to sell tickets so that we can raise the funds that provide these things in the classroom. So, you know, it is an issue for some of us to look at it when we see that there's enthusiasm for putting $100,000 a year away for this eventual artificial turf replacement. You know, I'm all for that type of swell, great planning. It is. It's smart, you know, but I'm also looking at what's the proportion of the funds that are coming out of the improvement funds in this case, or the general fund, for one activity, and then to ask a smaller group who could cover their own costs if that fee went and stayed there, for instance, an orchestra. We would have to do less fundraising than we're already doing, but you see, it seems unequal as to what you're willing to put a larger percentage of the total dollars towards when, you know, you have a group of students that could use that support as well. And, you know, it's that, or it's like newspaper, and it's like, where's the same level of support for these other activities that a lot of our students participate in? And it just proportionately, it does not seem fair to a lot of people looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from board members this evening? Oh, wait, no, don't comment. There is one more speaker. I'm sorry, Louise, I thought you were last. Poor Annette Highland, I apologize.
That's okay.
You are last, yes.
I've sat here all evening. I wasn't going to let you get away.
No, Highland.
I have to I'll use one part of 1 minute. I recently had a knee replacement, and without that, I would not have been able to get to this meeting, because you're on the second floor. There is no parking anywhere near the entrance, and I parked over there thinking I could go in one of those doors, and I had to walk all the way around. Now, I walk just fine now, but I think there are people who might like to attend who you might think of a more handicapped accessible meeting room. Also, I had something else, but now I can't remember it. I came here tonight largely, I had communicated with Dr. Nestor Baker about Longfellow. Longfellow, I'm sure you've all seen Longfellow. It is absolutely beautiful, and we have spent thousands maintaining that building, putting a new slate roof on it, changing the HVAC, doing everything. It was a wonderful program. It was a successful program. And not only was it successful, but they interacted with the neighborhood. They invited us over for bean dinners and things. The parent-teacher organization was so strong that they maintained the landscaping around. They were so excited about it, they wanted to get it on the Western Flora, which I guess commercial buildings can't do. All that was wiped out, and I don't get it. I don't get it. That school is so important. I'm sure you're not going to turn it into another pilot as it was, or a math and science. But when you think about it, I have taught in my career, when you think about it, you have a school where the kids did not test to get in. It was a lottery system. The teachers were very successful in bringing these kids to a point of excellence with regard to math and science. I just don't get why we abandoned that. I know somebody said we couldn't afford it. I thought they said $90,000, which sounds pretty cheap to me, but it's very, very important that you guys figure out a use for Longfellow. I had been told that after 2 years vacant, it had to be sold. And believe me, if you want to revolt, just sell Longfellow and I will pack this room with mad people who you are going to want to vote on the next levy. And I'm not threatening. I admire all of you. I think spending all this time, as I have tonight, twice a month, you guys deserve a medal just for doing that. This is a hard job. It's a complicated job. And I have tons of respect for anybody. This kind of service is particularly laudable because it isn't easy. You got a lot of people yelling at you and stuff. And anyway, my time's running out. But you have to know. And I want somebody to get back to me and tell me what's happening. 2 years ago, I came here, a year and a half, to speak on the very topic. And I have heard nothing. And I called Mr. LaRose, is it LaRosa or LaRose? And he advised me to come to the meeting. I didn't realize it was going to be an entire night commitment. And so I've come. And you have to understand, I'm not just speaking for myself. I am speaking for that whole neighborhood. Go over there, drive around, look at it. It sits on how many acres? Do we know? 2, 3? Right there in the middle of that development. So, guys, I'm running out of time, but thank you so much, and please get back to me about Longfellow and work on Longfellow. Find a constructive use for a wonderful asset.
Annette was the last speaker this evening. And I do want to move to board comments and also ask the superintendent if he would like to address any of the comments that were made this evening.
There's a number. Let me address some pieces of these, particularly as it relates to pay to participate and orchestra. So you know, there was a meeting today that included several of our music teachers and district officials to talk about the ticket concern. And we understand at this point that the ticket sales has been a booster-sponsored piece for a fundraiser. And so in our conversations, the first rule was no harm to anyone's current resources. But we did talk about several aspects of that. In terms of the pay to participate, I can certainly understand people's frustrations in trying to understand the mechanisms, and it's really pretty simple. We have an athletic side and we have an extracurricular side. We have a flat fee on both sides that we charge for those, and those dollars are used, those participation, pay to participate dollars are used to offset the cost of the supplemental contracts. They were not broken down by different sports, different numbers of coaches or sponsors or supervisors. They weren't broken out by years of experience, which is also a factor that determines if someone's supplemental contract. They're merely put into a lump sum and directed towards diminishing the cost of the supplemental contracts across both sides. Certainly, you could get more detailed around it in terms of how you organize that. So that's what it goes to. Some of that frustration comes on the heels of legitimate frustrations and feelings regarding what happened during cuts. I'm blessed so far as a superintendent. I haven't had to deal with cuts. I'm not interested in cuts. I'm not interested in taking any of our fine arts programs backwards from where they're at. I'm only interested in working with this board and this community of trying to maintain and enhance those opportunities for students. I understand their value to the educational process. It's also embedded deeply in our strategic plan. If you recall, I referred to it as more than core. So I am interested in that, and to that end, we're already starting the process of looking at that. I'm working with Dr. Federico, who works with our fine arts people, to get kind of a inventory of what curriculum, what opportunities we have in place now. So not interested in getting in the way of boosters and their fundraising efforts, not interested in scaling back those opportunities for kids. only interested in moving that forward. And so we had a good conversation today amongst those people, and I think it'll be productive. The end result of that was at the end of the meeting, not only was it do no harm, it was make no changes. So we need to talk to the board some more. Ms. Griffin and I have talked about this. We need to talk to the board some more regarding some of the practices and where they go in terms of accountability on everybody's parts and everybody's protection about how that looks. So long-winded answer, but we're going to work through that together, and we've already started that process. As to Longfellow, I apologize because I think Mr. LaRose, when he talked to you, initially understood that he was doing his his presentation on the capital plan this evening. And I asked him politely last week if we could move it to next time. So unfortunately, you missed that part, but you got a wonderful presentation from our kids about how we're using technology. So I hope that was healthy for you. So we are looking at that one, and Longfellow is on that list of opportunities for us for how can we use that building as part of our programs for kids. So we're still looking at that. And it is a wonderful building. It's one of my favorite buildings in the district. And on the handicap piece, we do have a provision in, when we do our announcements, it indicates that if someone needs assistance getting in the building to contact us, which I understand is inconvenient, but it is in place because we are handicap accessible to the second floor. So we can do that in the future. So all of the pieces about turf and supplementals and what we ask families to give for their students to be part of those activities, the wonderful work of all the booster groups, music, athletics, all of them, all of that enhances the opportunities for kids. And all of it at times can feel like my neighbor got the better deal than me. And that's a problem because we want equity of experience for all kids. And I struggle with it when I'm handed decision points that allow some opportunities in some places because of the resources available to them from the public to enhance those experiences from kids, but not be able to replicate that at another building or another program. And that's always a struggle point. So I understand those pieces. I don't say to you that I have solutions for all of them. I'll tell you this, 4 school districts, I have yet to find a place that got it right. Because it just is. And I struggle with the amount of energy we expend as a school community putting our hands out, asking the community for more outside of what we normally ask for, and the pressure that puts on. So there's the use of the internal resources we have from the taxpayers, and the beliefs that some people have about how we should use those. I'll be specific in terms of extracurricular and non-state mandated pieces. So we struggle internally. That puts pressure externally for folks who want to provide the best opportunities to kids, that they reach back out to the community and ask for more resources, and it feels like we're always asking. It's a difficult position. And I don't pretend to have all the solutions yet, but I know one thing, little things like bringing the people we did in today to talk about those pieces like were presented this evening are where we're going to get to the solutions, right people at the table. And so that's what I'll continue to try and do, and working with this board to talk about how we use the resources we have. As we know, Ms. Griffith presented, once again, 3 times since I've been here, a very, very healthy 5-year forecast that puts this district in a position it hasn't been in a long, long time, which is not to ask for new money in a long time period. So how do we maintain that course? I heard I'm going to echo the newest president of Ohio State University, who was interviewed on NPR the other day and was asked what the #1 challenge was. He said the #1 challenge was trying to maintain high-quality experiences for kids in a time period of shrinking and difficult resources. Got the same problem. I got the same problem as the president of Ohio State. So we do. And
We're not going to pay you what he
yeah, I don't want. Yeah, and I don't want some of the other issues he has. So anyway. Yeah, we need to continue having those conversations. I know we all appreciate our parents and our community members who step up and bring those opportunities for kids. That's what creates those those experiences we see. And we got to continue to challenge ourselves, look for equitable ways of doing that, and continue to challenge ourselves to ask ourselves a hard question about how we're putting our resources and what they're going towards. As a matter of fact, it's in the strategic plan. It's at the bottom of the balanced scorecard, right? So we got to continue to do those things, and because our kids deserve it. So we'll continue, and I appreciate the push and the challenges we have, and hope we can continue the conversations.
Board member comments?
I'd like to go very quickly. Mrs. Highland, was it?
Yes, and she left.
Okay, that's her name?
Yes,
Highland?
Mrs. Highland.
All right, I agree with her. I think that is one of the most, when I first saw that building, we have to do something constructive with that building. It's gorgeous. And we have to figure that out, you know, together here. The other issue I have is, you know, where the orchestra pay-to-play thing. I am concerned a little bit about if it's true that they're paying the $50 for a credit course, and I don't know if we're charging other credit classes, but that's something maybe the administration needs to look into. I don't know. I haven't looked into that, but to me, a curricular course that the students are getting credit for, and maybe we're charging other.
There's two differences here. We do charge instructional fees for consumable items for some courses that kids take,
Right.
science. In this case, the pay-to-participate fee indeed offsets the cost of a supplemental contract that's available to the orchestra teacher for time spent for events that occur outside the school day. So, because there's an orchestra concert so that's where that comes from. So it's not to pay. The tricky point, as the orchestra teachers will tell you, is, well, the kids are required to do the shows as part of their grade. That's the tricky point.
Sure.
Students are required to be there, but we have to pay the teacher for the additional time for being there.
But we pay other supplemental contracts, and we don't charge classroom, you know, we don't charge the speech teacher, we don't charge, you know.
Any place where there's a supplemental contract, we charge a pay-to-participate fee to offset the cost of the supplemental contract.
Any course that any course that a teacher has a supplemental contract, we do charge a fee for that.
It's my understanding that any place we have a supplemental contract, there's a pay-to-participate fee, regardless of whether or not that supplemental contract is connected to a teacher and part of a course. That's what I inherited.
I got you. Yeah, I knew you. Yeah, I mean, you inherited the Longfellow issue too. So, you know, I know all of that, and that is part of our issues today. And I would just like to lastly congratulate the South Marching Band because they certainly have done a great job in their competitions, and so you know, keep up the good work. Thanks. That's it.
Just quickly, again, the South Marching Band, just tremendous job that y'all did this year. I want to shout out to Westerville Central football team, just a great job that they have done, and really the unsung people that have just done great work behind the scenes that are not recognized, et cetera. But, you know, thank you for the A-plus folks and people that just continue to do really good work. I'm always, I'll just conclude with this. I got a bunch of notes I'd speak to, but I am always impressed with the amount of donations we get. I just don't, I didn't know that occurred, truth be told. And so for those of you, you're fundraising, you're cookie baking, you're cleaning cars, and still out there donating. So it's huge. It's huger than you know. And yes, I recognize that's not really a word, but said it anyway.
A couple of items. First, Longfellow. I can tell you that, you know, from my regular interactions with Jeff LaRose, that we are constantly discussing that property and constantly discussing other properties within the school's portfolio. Our goal is obviously to have optimum utilization of every asset that we have. So it's definitely part of the conversation. It has never been forgotten. We are just working through the process of figuring out best use and how to manage those assets. So that's definitely out there. I think that the music subject is interesting to me. I say this as a Westerville Central band dad, marching, concert, orchestra, cover the whole spectrum. You know, so I think on the olive branch side of the equation, I think if we've not visited the policy structure as it relates to, or the operating procedure structure as it relates to the school's music program, and probably theater programs, pay-to-pay versus activity fee, it's probably time for us to take a look at that, right? Now, on the reminder end of the spectrum, as a Westerville Central dad, Westerville Central marching band parent, Westerville Central orchestra parent, there is no project that I was prouder of than, from an investment standpoint, that was the largest single student use space improvement project this year, the Westerville South High School band room. And unfortunately, I haven't heard any mention of that in the course of any meetings over the last couple of months, because it was a great project. And the orchestra room, I apologize. It was a great, yeah, the orchestra room. It was a great project. It is an excellent repurposing of multiple rooms and put back into a space that could be used for a great program. So I think that investment should show that as a board and a district, we're not forgetting about these programs. We're not making decisions of one priority over the other. We're trying to work with the resources and the assets that we have. And I'm exceptionally proud of that particular project, as well as the other improvement projects that we've done at Westerville South. And again, I'm saying that as a Central dad, because I firmly believe, I've stated it multiple times, we're one community with three hearts when it comes to our high schools. And I'm very, very proud of the work and effort that we're putting into and restoring programs and renewing our assets and making sure that we're doing the right things as a community and a school board. So,
Tracy?
I'm going to pass.
Okay. I made a few notes. I do think that we can do a better job as regards accessibility. And I have a couple of thoughts that I'll share with you later as I work them through in my head that makes it more comfortable, more obvious, more effective for individuals who may want to attend. That's important. And Peg, I know you have raised that in the past as well. The extracurricular versus the curricular piece, I agree that it is time for us to visit that. I would say revisit, but the majority of the board members here did not visit that particular discussion when it occurred, nor did the superintendent, so it's time for us to visit that topic. John, I do want to thank you for moving very quickly. When I raised the issues around the orchestra with John at the end of last week, and he moved immediately to call people together to discuss that. I appreciate that, John. I appreciate that, Scott, very much as you worked through those issues, and will continue to do so. The Longfellow piece, Longfellow is a gem, and as I have told Annette Highland in the past in our emails that she referred to, I have not sensed an appetite from anyone here to get rid of Longfellow, the property, in any way, shape, or form. I also told her that, it could change in the future. But at this point in time, I sense no appetite to do that. I think that we will indeed have to focus very soon on what we choose to do with Longfellow, but we are also very, very careful in watching to make sure that we adhere to all of the applicable laws so that we do not in any way find ourselves in a bind as regards that property. It's important to the history of the district, it's important to the cohesion of the neighborhood, and it's an important asset overall for the taxpayers. The taxpayers of this community have invested heavily in that building from its inception. And from an educational standpoint and from an economic standpoint, it behooves us to make sure that we utilize the property, as you said, utilize all of our assets in the most effective, efficient, and appropriate way possible. Longfellow will soon be coming back to us for discussion. Those were all of the points that I decided I would make from my list of wrapping around the page and writing all up and down on it. Moving on to the item number 15, that is the announcement of our next meetings. And we do have one meeting left in this calendar year, and we'll meet in regular session on Monday, December the 8th at 6 o'clock here in the Early Learning Center. And that will be our last meeting for 2014. Yes, it has gone quickly. Could I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second, Bart, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Velardo,
Yes.
Mr. Byrd,
Yes.
Dr. French,
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker.
Yes, we are adjourned.
Whoa, you hit that hard.